Welcome, everyone, into another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look at the week that was in Washington, D.C. through the lens of the second Trump administration. And joining me this week here is David Brody, CBN chief political analyst, and Dan Andrews, host of CBN's Quick Start podcast. And we're going to get into a very busy week. It's been a few weeks since we last chatted, and understandably, much has happened over that time. But even just in the last few days, as we're sitting here, a lot of different things to get to. We're going to start off with the situation going on in Minneapolis right now, with the ICE intervention in Minnesota and the shooting of a woman by an ICE agent there. Federal law enforcement, local officials both say that they are looking at this deadly incident that took place on Wednesday morning there. The FBI has reportedly told Minnesota that they're not to do an investigation into this, shutting down their investigation. Local officials want to do their own separately from the government investigation. The Trump administration continues to call the woman who was killed a domestic terrorist who is trying to run over an ICE agent in the city as part of a new ICE push to round up suspected Somali illegal immigrants. There's a lot of layers to this story here that have been building over the last couple of weeks. Vice President Vance has declared the ICE agent should get absolute immunity from any potential prosecution. And he described the situation as an ICE agent defending himself from someone who was trying to attack him. Eyewitnesses recorded this on their phone. And so most of you who are listening to this or watching this on YouTube have probably seen what happened on your own, and you have formed your own opinion of what happened in that moment. Of course, there are cries from local residents, others who are calling the shooting a murder, calling it an unwarranted shooting, at best an act of panic by an ICE agent, and at worst a case of murder here. So, David, two aspects to this story. That's just kind of a rough setup to all of this, but everyone has an opinion on what they think happened in that moment. I certainly have mine. I'm sure you guys have your opinion of what we think we saw in that video. And then there's how both sides are handling the incident. The Trump administration officials on the scene, very quick to call it an act of domestic terrorism before the video came out. And then the video came out, and a lot of people saw a contradiction there in the story that the Trump administration was trying to tell. So what is your take on all of this as it's unfolded over the last couple of days?
Well, first of all, guys, I think we're going to need a longer podcast today to go through all of this. Honestly, I mean, we can go for a while. I've got lunch plans, but then after that, where do I begin? First of all, let's start with this. We live in an America today where you're going to see what you want to see. So, I mean, that's pretty common at this point, sadly. If you're into the TDS movement, and you're not a big fan of Trump and you're against what ICE is doing, you're going to see the fact that this woman did not run the ICE agent over, wasn't trying to. Conversely, if you see the Trump viewpoint on this, or I say the Trump, but you know what I'm trying to say, the ICE agents out there doing their job viewpoint, then you're going to see something differently. I'm very curious as to what you two think of the video. I mean, let's just keep it transparent here. I mean, look, here's my take on it. Okay. First of all, let's just start with this, and it has to do with numbers. 10 and 2, right? I mean, so you get pulled over by law enforcement. You may not like it. I got it. You got to be 10 and 2. You got to have your hands on the steering wheel. You can't be going and jetting away in any sort of fashion from the cops. You can't do that. I mean, can we all at least have a baseline of agreement on that? Maybe we don't. I don't know. But that's that. So sadly, we don't want to see anybody shot to death. And yet at the same time, she was not following what should be the proper protocol. I mean, that's just the truth, guys. And I know there's going to be people that say, yeah, but maybe she felt intimidated or feared for it. Doesn't matter. You got to just stay there in the moment. You can't be jetting away and pulling out like that when federal agents or anybody, for police for that matter. I mean, you pulled over on the Beltway and you're going to speed away from cops. That's called actions have consequences.
Well, yeah. Let me just add to that, David. I mean, I think if the reports are true, and it seemed, I mean, I've seen this reported in multiple spots. Let me know if you guys heard anything differently, but apparently she was intentionally trying to block these ICE agents.
Like,
this was the goal of what she was doing out there. So first of all, you can't do that. You can't block anyone in traffic, let alone federal agents you can disagree with them being there all you want, but the minute you inject yourself into the situation, you are putting yourself at risk. I mean, that is just the fact of the matter. I mean, you can debate all day long the legality of should ICE be there, should they not, but when you start going in and trying to intervene with that, you are definitely putting yourself at risk. And then because people can say, well, there should be a local police action. Well, regardless, I agree with what you're saying, David. When you are come across federal agents, particularly ones you're agitating and trying to block, then you try to run away. Like, you're just asking for something bad to happen. We can Monday morning quarterback. Well, was he going to get hit by the car? This guy had already been run over one time in his past. So you have a guy in front of you, whether you think he should be there or not. You can't start running the car and then just say, well, he should have just sidestepped it. To me, you've put yourself in a very dangerous situation.
Yeah. And John, I mean, I agree with you, Dan. And John, it kind of goes to the point, right? Like, where are you hearing that in the mainstream media, that this guy was run over and had 30 some odd stitches last year? I mean, you're not getting the context of, like, what might he have been thinking for a moment. Now, having said that, do I think she was trying to purposely run him over? I'm not going to judge intent, but all I know is I got a car coming at me. I'm feeling like maybe my life is in danger. Yeah, I think maybe my life is in danger. Now, in this case, the first shot into the windshield, I get. The second one, to me, feels a little bit more dicey. That was on the angle. That was like afterwards. So that was right into the window. I don't know about that one. I'll be honest with you.
Just one last thing. I mean, I'm just going to reiterate. I just hate we have to dissect every
right.
And of course they'll investigate that and they'll decide whether or not he should have used deadly force there. But again, I just hate it because there's no reason for her to be there. She shouldn't be there doing that. And you can argue, well, maybe I shouldn't be there. Well, you definitely shouldn't be there trying to intervene with them.
And John, can I just say one last thing? I'm sorry. I really want to hear your take on this. But to Dan's point, there is now fresh reporting, specifically by the New York Post, but their investigation team. Okay, so I know the Post has some trashy headlines sometimes, but this is their investigative team, where she joined an anti-ICE group there at her son's school. Her son is 6 years old. He goes to this like woke social justice type school, and they had anti-ICE programs there and groups, and she joined it. And she was literally, I mean, this is investigative journalism stuff. This isn't just like somewhere I read on The Sun, in the UK. I mean, this is legitimate stuff. You're not hearing that from the media either. So to Dan's point, she was heavily involved in this. I mean, she didn't live in that area. This is not a Minnesota mom who was just out for a daily stroll.
Yeah, I'd feel different. I mean, David, sorry to interrupt, but I would feel completely different if she was just kind of out in the neighborhood and then got mixed up in it and then got scared and was confused and didn't know what was going on. But it's completely different if you are willingly saying, I don't like these ICE agents here, I'm getting in front of it. The two completely different scenarios. And we'll see what the eventual final facts say. But like you're saying, that's what it seems to be pointing to at the moment.
Okay, John, we filibustered, please.
Yeah.
Well, that's the first I'm hearing. I thought that the woman was a member of the community, that she lived in that area, that she had. Okay.
And that's confirmed. That's confirmed, by the way. That's not just like I heard it on a right-wing blog. That's confirmed.
All right, so my initial reaction. So the way I saw this, and this is maybe coloring. I'm gonna have a different angle on this than you guys do. As we're in the newsroom watching all this happen, we were listening to Kristi Noem describe the situation, that a woman tried to run over an ICE agent using her vehicle as a weapon and referring to her as an act of terrorism, an act of domestic terrorism. And then the video comes through on my Twitter feed as I'm watching it, and I see something very different from what was described by the Department of Homeland Security Secretary in that moment. I had a year, and it's not a very long time, but I had a year where I was working in public information offices as a freelance public information officer for a number of different police stations, a couple of months with the Capitol Police right after January 6th. So I got a chance to see a lot of body cam footage of some pretty terrible stuff, to the point where I knew I didn't really want to do that job long term. It was just not something for me. And I have seen video of people intentionally trying to run people over with their cars. When I watched this video, my immediate reaction was it was an unjustified shooting. And it doesn't even really matter to me a whole lot why she was there. There is also reporting that she was being given conflicting orders to get out, to go, and then someone else was also telling her to get out of the car. So there appeared to be one person pointing for her to leave and another person pointing for her to get out. So there's some, I think there's a lot of, I will agree with you. I mean, I'll say this. I don't think there did not appear to be any intentionality of her trying to run him over. It seems to me pretty clearly from the video she's trying to drive away.
Yeah, now, but John, she's speeding away though. She's speeding away. It's not
she's
like
not speeding away. She'd only gone like a few feet.
She peeled out onto the ice and she went.
She didn't peel out. No,
the tire
I don't agree.
You could see the tire slip.
I mean, she's moving pretty quickly, John.
Right, but I'm not, and I don't want to go frame by frame where the tires were turned and they weren't heading towards the officer, because I agree with you. When anything you break something down frame by frame, you can really kind of distort
just the video itself.
Let me say this: I can understand the ICE agent may have felt threatened. I can understand that. I'm going to grant that to the ICE agent here, because I think based on a lot of the stuff that I have seen over the years, like I remember seeing one body cam video when I was doing this work of an officer who pulled up on a couple of people who were taking stuff, or we're trying to throw stuff away in like a private business's big trash can unit. That's private property. You can't do that. So an officer pulls up. These people have like 3 dogs in their car. They jump out of the car and start running at the officer. 2 of the dogs are called off by the owners, but the one doesn't listen and keeps coming at the officer. The officer in that moment has a decision to make. Is this dog going to harm me? Is this dog going to attack me? Is it just coming up to say hello? The officer could have gotten back into his police car. He could have used a taser, but instead he shoots the dog. Okay? So there's a lot of different places you've got to get to here. To crawl inside the mind of the officer. What are you thinking in that moment? Why did you not think you could do these other things? Why did you not think that you could handle this in a different way? And ICE officers are supposed to be trained to know how to avoid using your weaponry. Hang on. Here, let me just finish.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I don't think in this case it was a justified shooting based on the video that I saw, but I am willing to allow an investigation, a fair investigation, to go through the whole process here and lay it all out. The issue that I think we can come across here is who does the investigation, because it seems as though you're already having the government say that this officer should get immunity for whatever happened. The Trump administration has already come out and said what they believe happened before any investigation has taken place. And there's reason to also look at the local officials who have come out and declared what they think the video is as well. So I don't know how you investigate this independently. Who do you turn to for an independent investigation of this to really get at the facts? Because we're all looking at the same video and coming across it a different way.
Well, a couple of things I just want to point out. Like the example you mentioned there, it sounded like the detail you said was that the 2 people came out, from the garbage can story you gave, and ran at the officer. Like,
no, not the 2 people. They're dogs. They're dogs.
But the people didn't run out. Okay.
No.
All right.
They were trying to call the dogs off.
Okay. All right. So that's I think like it's a little bit of apples and oranges there. I mean, let me ask you guys this question: if this woman, Miss Good, if she sat there when they came up and she just waited to see if they're talking, you think she'd be alive today?
Yes.
Probably.
Of course, and that's the point. So. But that's the point.
The moving of the car is what triggered the gunfire.
And that's the point. And that's a full stop. That's a full stop.
And if she didn't,
I don't think it's a full stop, though. I really don't.
If she didn't try to block federal agents in the midst of, their job that they were trying to do, would she be alive today?
Listen,
I understand that you can't just shoot people when they're doing something you don't like. I get that, but I guess what I'm saying is she takes a lot of the responsibility here for putting herself in this situation and making an officer make a decision. That's my reason I don't like the Monday morning quarterback some of these, when the person clearly put themselves in harm's way, and then we're like, was he really his life in danger or not? Like, they put the onus on the officer to have to make a split-second decision, and when you do that, you're playing with fire. And so I don't know what they're going to rule after the investigation, if they think it was justified or not, but I just think when you are the one that put, like, if the cops had, if the agents had instigated all this and, like, you know, cornered a car out of nowhere, like, it would be a completely different scenario. Since she was an agitator, I just feel like it's going to be a very hard bar to clear. You know, and I'm not a lawyer on these things, so I don't know, but it feels like to me it's going to be a very difficult legal bar to clear when she was the one that instigated the confrontation.
Yeah. So a couple of things here. First of all, John, I hear what you're saying. Look, when I say hear what you're saying, here's my point. This whole thing about was it justified or not, let that play out if they can get a fair investigation and a fair trial. That's a whole nother situation, but let it play out. That's fine. I have no problem with, like, the, you know, letting all of that play out the way it needs to play out. But that's not the bigger issue here. I mean, that, in other words, whether or not he was justified or not is not, sadly, is not the bigger issue here. The bigger issue here is how this is escalated into people that should be peacefully protesting. If you've got a problem with ICE agents, you need to peacefully protest. You do not need to be aggressive in those situations. I'm sure, John, you're not calling for people to be aggressive protesters. I'm assuming you know that was an aggressive move. Whether she was going at a slow speed or a fast speed, that car should never have moved.
But you don't want to offer the possibility that she was trying to do what the officers wanted, to move away. That was what they were trying to get her to move away. So they were going to try and get her out of the car. That was
not when you're going that fast. No.
Well, somebody's standing in front. I don't know, when there's somebody standing in front of me.
Why is she going so?
And well, but she's also got two officers coming from the side trying to grab her door handle. It's possible she's not even looking in front of her to see the officer in front of her. That's what I mean. We don't know.
That's possible. I grant you that. I don't know that she's like, oh, he's there, I'm just plowing him over. Right. I grant you that it is definitely possible, and probably even likely that she was just trying to go away. But in the craziness of the moment, because she put herself there trying to block these guys, then chaos happens, and there's a guy there. She doesn't see him. I would probably agree that I don't think she was intentionally trying to run him over, but given what she was doing, and the guy was right there, maybe she didn't see him. But
I mean, can I just say, if it was one of our family members there, we would be so distraught that one of our family members died in that way. Okay, number one, full stop, end of story in a way. But then at some point we would think, gosh, I wish they would have just not pulled out at that point. Pulled away like that. And now I know what you're saying, John, but you're holding on to a very, very, very loose thread here that I'm not even sure is true, that she was told to go ahead and make her way away. We haven't heard that from authorities for sure yet. And now if that comes out, well, that changes the equation for sure, but I'm not expecting that to come out at all.
And I want to add one other thing, and because you guys have been talking about, like, who this woman is, a professional agitator, and I can't speak to that. You guys have done more on that, but I will say the AP reporting, she did live in the neighborhood. She had dropped off her 6-year-old son at a Minneapolis daycare earlier that morning. She had just moved from Kansas City to that neighborhood. She did live there. She was not there as a professional agitator. Now, was she there trying to get in the way of what ICE agents were doing? Yes, that's not in dispute.
Yeah.
But I think that to say she wasn't a part of she was a part of that community. She had just moved there, but she was a part of that community. She did live in that neighborhood. So it's not like she came from out of town seeing that ICE had come there to be a professional agitator. Well, I don't know if that means anything, that makes any difference.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't say she was a professional agitator. My only thing is that I think her spouse said this, that she was crying at the scene because she said, it's my fault. I made her come down here. So, like, they were purposely trying to block the agents, at least in their neighborhood.
I think maybe that's
they just
true.
heard it.
I grant you that.
But still, either way. But I agree with David. I think, we could we can go back and forth on this, and that's what people in the country are doing as well. Like you said, we're going to see different things, and the courts will sort that out. But I do think, like David said, the bigger problem here is now how do we respond going forward? I have not been thrilled with how really any of the sides have responded to this, and and particularly, the governor of Minnesota and the mayor, basically ramping up the rhetoric. When if you don't like Trump's rhetoric on ICE and immigration and the way he's kind of being tough on that, why would you sit there and say, get the expletive out of our city and basically kind of set the stage for like a civil war? I mean, it just seems really irresponsible.
John, just to clarify for the record here, because you're quoting Associated Press, and I've got information here. Once again, it's a New York Post investigation, but it says that she became involved in something called, quote, ICE Watch, which is a loose coalition of activists dedicated to disrupting ICE raids in Minneapolis. So, I mean, she clearly, she wasn't out for a jog. She wasn't out to go to the supermarket to get milk, John. I mean, so let's be clear about that. We got to take that off the table. She was there because she had a problem with what ICE was doing.
I don't know what to say. I fundamentally disagree that really factors into whether or not she should have been shot or not.
No, we're not saying that. Therefore, she was an agitator, and therefore she deserved it. She had it coming. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that actions have consequences. There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
But.
All right. Well, I do want to just briefly talk, and we're going to move on to Venezuela here in just a second. But I think, Dan, the point that you were making just a second ago about how we move forward with this is going to be key. And that's, it sounds as though Kristi Noem was saying on Friday that I think it was on Thursday that, these ICE surges into these different locations are going to continue. There may be even more ICE agents sent into Minneapolis. Certainly, there is a lot of unrest now taking place in Minneapolis between now it's police who are having to deal with the protesters who are there in the wake of this. And there have been a lot of things over these after the last decade or two where you think, is this a tipping point to something? Is this going to be something that either causes something to kind of spin out of control or for something to be tamped down on? And I wonder if you guys think that this is a tipping point for what we are seeing with how ICE is being used in the country, their mission as it's been here during the first year of the Trump administration, or if it's just going to kind of continue on. Will it be like so many other things that we've seen, like a big school shooting happens that you think is going to maybe something could change out of that, but it just kind of never really happens, or some other big something else happens, 9/11, the Congress comes together and there's bipartisanship, and then it falls apart, because that's just kind of how things work in America. Will this be something that is a tipping point for how ICE is used, the conversation around ICE, or do we just kind of get back to normal at some point here in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I think it's going to be a tipping point for sure. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think we're going to see this throughout the Trump administration. And look at what happened in Dallas. Was it Dallas? It was somewhere in Texas where those ICE officers, they didn't die, but they were being targeted. Instead, it was the illegal immigrants that died in ICE custody, but it wasn't the ICE officer. So we had that shooting already, guys. But now we're having this. And if you look at the statistics, there have been over 1,000, John. There have been over, and I said it, John, the reason I'm saying to you, John, specifically on this is because it goes to the vehicle aspect of this. There have been over 1,000 attempted vehicle getaways, if you will, trying to get away from ICE officers like this since the Trump administration started. That's up 50% from when the Biden administration did it. Violence against ICE agents is up 1,000%. 1,000%. Those are government statistics, taken with a grain of salt if you like, but it's up to 1,000%. They're getting doxxed as well. There's all sorts of things that are going on against ICE agents. Just look it up. Not you, John. I mean, just, overall, just look it up. I mean, so they're under constant threat. So, back to him, using his gun there. I'm not saying it was justified or not. We'll let everybody figure that out. But I will say that they are on edge. So this idea that, the folks that are being pulled over by ICE are on edge. Well, how about it cuts both ways? It cuts both ways. And these ICE agents, are just doing their job. It is federal law in this country to arrest people that are either here illegally, or if you have questions to pull them over, you can do that if you have questions. And so that was it. And she wasn't even here illegally. She was there to cause a ruckus. That's the truth.
I just hope, John and David, that going forward, that people do not allow themselves to be used as useful idiots in politicians' games. And politicians have shown that they do not care. Generally speaking, a lot of them absolutely do not care about individuals and individual instances. They care more about pushing their particular agenda. And I think if you allow yourself to get riled up, thinking about this woman here, like that, what rhetoric was she listening to that ICE, presented such a damaging threat to her life? I mean, even if you don't like what they're doing, to make you go out and interject yourself in between what they're trying to do and put yourself at risk. Don't let somebody's rhetoric rile you up to that extent to where you are going to alter your life and make horrible decisions. And I'm not saying don't protest or anything like that. Go ahead and protest, but keep it on the sidewalk, keep it calm, keep it peaceful. Do not do what they want you to do. I think a lot of politicians, the grimier ones, I don't know if they want people to die. I'm not going to say that, but they want these confrontations. They want this controversy going on because it helps whatever narrative they're pushing.
And they can raise money off of it. And they can raise money off of it. Let's be honest. And let me just say, in terms of the language, Dan, I'm glad you brought that up. And look, there's been inflammatory rhetoric on both sides, but as it relates to what you're speaking about, Dan, specifically, these folks that are against ICE are listening to people like Jasmine Crockett, who called ICE slave patrols. You have Tim Walz, who has called them a modern day Gestapo. You've had Governor Pritzker in Illinois call them basically saying that this is essentially Nazi Germany out there. You've had tons of references by Democrats to say that they are kidnapping people and disappearing people. Listen, you're going to say that rhetoric, people are going to Dan's point, are going to buy it. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to speed away from the Gestapo. That's what they're thinking. And that's a problem. I got a real problem with this, guys. I'm sorry. Words mean something. Words mean something. And by the way, Trump too, shame on Trump in many other instances. I'm not here to beat up on just Democrats, okay? So it's not that. Trump has done this too, not necessarily in the ICE situation, but when I'm going to punch him in the whatever, he's done it too. They all do it.
Right. And I think people can have an opinion on what ICE is doing and tactics and all that kind of stuff. I certainly have my opinions on what ICE is doing and the tactics, more specifically the tactics that they're using. I think ICE is an organization that is needed in this country. I think you need to have a strong immigrations and customs enforcement agency in this country. And you can also have an issue with some of the tactics that are being used. I would like to see these ICE agents more to be more readily identifiable when they're when they're actually actively doing so. But see, that's a problem. I mean,
they're being doxxed.
But that doesn't mean that police officers are doxxed too. But you still have to wear the uniform. Like you can't just wear Kevlar and masks and secret clothing or whatever and just go up to cars and say, hey, get out of the car.
I thought you were talking about the masks. I thought you were talking about the masks only.
No. I mean, there are many situations where you have ICE agents where you don't know that they're ICE agents. You don't know who they are. I've seen it in DC. I have seen walking around DC sometimes. I'm assuming they're ICE agents talking to someone, but there's no readily identifiable thing on them that says ICE or like you would have to see if it was FBI or you would have to see if it was a police officer or I mean you need to have that kind of identification so that you're aware. Now in the case of Renee Good, she knew that these were ICE agents and I think I've seen some legal folks who are asking, do they have a right to go up and take people like to take her from her car? There's I don't know the answer to that question. I don't have the legal expertise to talk about all of that. But I think that's where I understand what ICE is doing. I understand their role in this country. I think it's an important role, and I think the vast majority of the officers are trying to do the best job that they can. And I, David, hear you 100% about the rhetoric that Democrats are using. And I think if we want that rhetoric to stop, then we also, like you said, have to hold the Republicans. We have to hold the Trump administration accountable for the same kind of rhetoric, for the ramping up the temperature. If we want things to calm down, everybody's got to calm down.
But not on ICE. On the ICE situation, the Democrats are the culprits here. They've been far worse, far worse.
Okay. Let's move on to Venezuela, a topic that certainly in most weeks would be top of the line news. The United States Coast Guard and Navy managed to overtake an oil tanker and board a ship that was in violation of the U.S. quarantine of tankers coming to and going from Venezuela this week. This tanker apparently, trying to make sure that they have all their bases covered, had a can of red and yellow Sherwin-Williams paint down in the cargo hold somewhere to paint a Russian flag on the side of it as they were in transit being chased by the U.S. The Senate voted on Thursday to rein in President Trump's war powers in Venezuela. 5 Republicans broke with leadership to vote with Democrats: Susan Collins, Todd Young, Josh Hawley, Rand Paul, and Lisa Murkowski. Now there's talk of potential boots on the ground in Greenland if Denmark doesn't agree to sell Greenland to the United States. Dan, I want to start with you on this. For a president that has criticized interventionist policies by previous administrations, most specifically in 2016 when he was running for president the first time, are Trump's moves in Venezuela and potentially Greenland and some other places a contradiction of some of the things he had said earlier? Or is he just keeping in line with, is he doing what he needs to do in order to make sure that drugs are not coming to the United States?
I think the answer to that question is probably a TBD, because I think these actions in and of themselves don't necessarily conflict, but depending on how it's managed going forward and how big the tentacles get into Venezuela and elsewhere for a longer period of time, then I think that discussion maybe becomes a little, and that question, the answer to it becomes a little more clear, because I think there are not a lot of people, I think, who are completely disagreeing with what Trump did with Maduro, because, I mean, you look at all of the countries, most of the countries around, I think, the globe, the bigger ones anyway, didn't recognize the Maduro government as a legitimate government. And, the Biden administration also had a $25 million reward, I believe, for Maduro, and this indictment was out there. So I think the action itself, I think, is justifiable. And I think most people, I think, agree with that. But then what do we do here going forward? What is the plan going forward? How involved is the Trump administration with Venezuela and what happens there? And, I think, and I'm sure David can expand on this, but I think what we saw had a lot more to do with just the drug trafficking. It had a lot more to do with some geopolitical concerns, with Venezuela being the chaos in America's backyard that was being utilized by Russia and China. And so there's all of that at play as well. So long answer to that question, I think, is a TBD, which I know is disappointing.
Well, I actually agree with you on the TBD part for sure. Or as the hipsters, people that take a beat. Let's everybody just take a beat.
Yeah.
And it's true. I think we have to take a beat. We don't know. We have no idea. There's a lot to say about this. First of all, let's start with this. Trump went around saying, "Make America great again" during the campaigns of 2016 and 2020. He didn't go around saying, "Make the Western Hemisphere great again." And so I think there's some concern in MAGA about that for sure. I also think, as it relates to the TBD part of it, where are we in 6 months to a year and a half? I mean, President Trump said to the New York Times on Friday, he said that it was going to be longer than a year, that the United States would be controlling what's going on in Venezuela. And by the way, controlling just simply means calling the shots. So, okay, so does that mean boots on the ground? We already know we have boots on the sea, if you will. We got them there. But what about boots on the ground? Well, if you're going to say the oil is significant, then I don't know. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not the dumbest guy in the world, but you might have to protect that oil down there. So does that mean boots on the ground? So once again, we don't know where this is going, but MAGA will have some concerns clearly if in a year and a half, we're talking about even more U.S. involvement in Venezuela, which is a real possibility here. In terms of the geopolitical stuff, yeah, the reason this is MAGA, if you will, and this is what Trump's trying to do, he's trying to make this MAGA. He says it's MAGA because you got Russia, right? You got China, you got Iran. They are in the tentacles of all three are inside our hemisphere, the Western hemisphere down in Latin America. You look, the Belt and Road Initiative from China, they've got about $70 billion worth of investment in Venezuela. Trump's like, not happening. So we continue to talk a lot about how China's a competitor, Russia's a competitor, Iran is a problem and a nuisance. So if you're trying to take care of bad bullies in your backyard, at least hemisphere backyard, then it makes sense that this would be MAGA, because you can't keep saying China's a threat to America and then not take care of China being a threat to America inside Venezuela / Latin America / the Western Hemisphere. So I get the MAGA aspect of it, but as President Trump has said, and he loves to call it this, it's not the Monroe Doctrine, it's the Donroe Doctrine, right? And where does the Donroe Doctrine end exactly? Colombia? Yeah. Yikes. I mean, they're doing the same thing. Not just Colombia. We talked about Greenland. Now, with Greenland, by the way, look, this is the art of the deal with Greenland. Trump doesn't want to militarily take over Greenland in terms of like, we're going to storm the beaches of Greenland. Okay, he don't want to do that, but it's art of the deal. You say that I'll take it over, and because what he really wants to do is buy Greenland. That's what he wants to do. So you threaten the big thing and then go, okay, they're not going to do that because no one's going to challenge the United States militarily. We want to take Greenland on a Saturday. We'd be done by the evening, Saturday night, and back at home in bed on Sunday morning. We could easily do that. So he's saying that because at that point, he can say, oh, okay, well, you won't give it to us militarily. So I'll tell you what, we'll buy it for X amount. It helps out Denmark. I'm not saying Denmark's going to do it, but I do think that that's part of the Donroe Doctrine. I hate to call it that. Let's just call it the Monroe Doctrine. It's the Monroe Doctrine is really what it is. And it's not, and by the way, Cuba's in this too. Now, in Cuba's situation, there's not going to be any sort of military action in Cuba. Okay, so that's not going to happen. But Cuba could easily fall at this point based on the fact that their economy is supported by majority, Venezuelan oil. So we got a domino effect going on. And I don't think this is going to stop. And Trump, by the way, back to Greenland, really wants Greenland. That's going to happen, guys. It's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I will say this. I'm sorry, I know I'm going off on all of this, but in 1951, right, there was this agreement after the World War II where actually the United States and Greenland, the United States and Denmark actually have an agreement. You know about this, right? You saw the New York Times reporting on this. I mean, the United States can build up military bases there. So my guess is it could be an extension of that agreement where the United States says, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And oh, by the way, can we get some rare earth minerals? I mean, Trump's going to do something to have a bigger presence in Greenland by the time his administration's done. No doubt about that.
I think at one point the United States had 150,000 troops in Denmark and doing different things at different bases, weather stations, all that kind of stuff.
Can I just say one last thing real quick on Greenland? I'm sorry, and I'll be 15 seconds, but obviously the Greenland thing is Monroe Doctrine as well, because that's a different not different hemisphere, but it's a different area, right? I mean, that's the North Atlantic. That's where Russia and China are coming in from the north, and they've got to protect the northern flank, if you will. And China, by the way, has invested billions of dollars in Greenland as well. So it's the same situation that they're doing in Venezuela, FYI. Okay, that's
so. I want to ask you guys one more question on this, and then we got to wrap up because we're running long.
Yeah.
But do you think it's a good idea? Is it a good policy for the United States to threaten military action against a protectorate of a NATO ally or anybody in order to secure a business deal? Like you're saying, he doesn't really want to go in militarily, but is it okay to threaten to use the military in different parts of the world where you want to extract something else instead?
Well, I don't think he's threatening. I know you're saying that word, and I'm sure they feel it's a threat, but I don't think it's threatening. I think the way the White House is going to spin this, and I think it's a pretty decent spin actually, is that they're helping NATO. I mean, doesn't NATO want some sort of protection in the North Atlantic, and the United States will be the one foot in the bill on that? I mean, to me, that's the argument that Stephen Miller in the White House is making. It kind of makes sense to me. Like, hey, NATO, slow your roll. You know, we're going to be up there in the north taking care of business. So I don't know. I just think it's a bunch of people that just are traditionalists and just want to kind of, they don't like the way Trump operates because Trump doesn't play by the same rules that everybody else does.
The only thing I'll say is that at her White House briefing this week, Caroline Leavitt said the U.S. was considering a range of options to acquire Greenland, including utilizing the U.S. military.
Yeah,
so
that's the art of the deal part. Right? No, I know.
But is that a threat to use the military? Is that threatening to use the military?
Sure, but it's leverage. It's not as leverage. I don't think it's a real threat. Look, if he goes in and storms the beaches of Greenland, let's have a different conversation at that point.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I'm just going to plead the fifth on Greenland.
That's probably wise. All right, we're going to wrap it up there for this edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. David Brody, Dan Andros, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks, John.
All right, John.